right, so it says we're live. I just want to welcome everybody to the Silver Bullet Live show. So welcome. I'm joined here by three other people. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Go ahead, Sherri.
Sherri Jensen, Silver Bullet Cutters, USA.
All right, we also have Dawn. Go ahead, Dawn.
Hello everyone, this is Dawn Grantham of Time Graphics in the UK.
All right, and we got Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle. I'm SEO and SMO specialist for Silver Bullet Cutters.
All right. So, like I said, this stuff is live. Feel free to ask your questions. We can see it, and we can actually repost it to you guys, so everyone can see what's going on. But in today's presentation, we're going to be talking about doing some, I guess, debossing some leather. Is that right, Dawn?
Yes, that's correct. Yes,
Okay.
It is actually debossing rather than embossing.
All right. So we have this nice little presentation along with a little bit of scowl tutorials embedded with this. So hopefully you guys will enjoy it. And let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. All right, so here you go. Here's the machine, and here's the tool that we're going to be talking about. It's the embossing, debossing. If you've been to our webinars before, you'll know that it can be used on various materials. Vellum, cardstock, soft metal, leather. And it comes with these 4 tips here, and we're actually going to be talking about this tip right here, and that's what we're going to be using on the leather. So these are some nice completed projects. Tell us a little bit about these, Dawn.
Okay, when you're embossing leather, although these look as though they are a line rather than a fill, every single one of the 4 designs is actually a fill. The reason for that is because the leather is quite dense and you want intense pressure over a small area, so a tight fill will produce this effect. It's debossing in each case, it's imprinting into the leather rather than the reverse side that you would see pressed up, and it gives a very effective result, as you can see.
All right. So whenever you're doing, leather and this, you want it to stay secure on the mat. And there's several ways that you can do it. And I'm going to let Sherri talk about both of these.
Okay. Okay, we'll start with the jig, which there have been numerous questions presented to us regarding jigs, and jigs are simply used for articles of media that you would like to have, be it engraved, embossed, whatever, so that they would stay in place. So one of the ways that we do this is using a jig. I personally use a chipboard jig. This is a piece of 3/0 chipboard that has been cut 1 millimeter larger than than whatever it is that you're going to be using in the piece of leather that we used is what is cut here. And and then that jig is actually attached to the mat with blue painter's tape, and so that's the 1 millimeter shadow that you would do to get the size that you want. You tape the jig down, and it's on a standard mat, and you want to make sure that you always adjust the pinch wheels so that they're not running over the leather. Secondary to that, the extra sticky mat can be used specifically if you are going to be doing embossing or debossing on it and then cutting it as well. Then you don't want to have the jig or anything. You never want to put tape on the leather. You want to adjust the pinch wheels again so the pinch wheels are never running over the top of the leather, and you make sure that you put painter's tape underneath those pinch wheels so that it doesn't pick up the adhesive on the mat, specifically if you're using that extra sticky mat.
If I could just interject
Yes,
here.
please.
If you're using the extra sticky, there is of course always the possibility to cut a piece of extra sticky renew sheet that's smaller than the full-size mat, just a little bit larger than your leather, and put that onto a normal mat. Then you don't have to worry the same about the pinch wheels onto the extra sticky.
Right, and I generally will save some of my older mats when I'm doing that, because it doesn't matter that they're a little bit warped when you're putting the leather or something thicker on there. So that's what I use some of my older mats for. Or if you have other mats that you've used, Cricut, Silhouette, any of those mats as well. I've also gone to the dollar store and got the chopping mats, and I've used those, and I've put the extra sticky on those to hold them down. So you can do that as well. So Dawn, did you have anything that you wanted to add to the jig, or is there anything different that you guys do there?
No, pretty much the same. I tend to use a mat board rather than a chipboard, but the method is exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. And we do have a lot of customers that tell me that they use plastic, and they'll use different types of plastic and make their jigs out of that, and then tape that down. I'm not sure what the difference is, but there's a lot of people that use that.
The main difference there is the fact that the jig's going to last longer.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would put in as a word of warning is that with the thicker media like leather, you're actually better with a jig that is thicker as well, so that it's held more firmly in place.
Right. Yep. Exactly. And that's the one thing you don't want. You don't want that piece of leather to be sliding around on there. So
absolutely not.
And especially if you have the smaller round discs or dog tags that people are engraving, those in particular, when you're using the engraving tool, you want to make sure that those are a little bit tighter even than the leather in there. So
now, what about this scenario, Sherri? Say I want to be extra safe and I want to use an extra sticky mat and put my jig on top.
Well, good luck.
That'd be okay.
Oh, absolutely. It's absolutely fine. You're never going to get that piece of chipboard off, but then if you're always going to use it for that jig, the adhesive on there will actually last a lot longer as well, so you'll be able to do more with it. It may, when we use larger pieces of leather like this, you may have a tendency to pull some of the backing off of that leather, and it sticks to that extra sticky, and then it deadens that extra sticky a lot quicker, and you don't have the option of washing that off if you're using chipboard. But I do like using the extra sticky myself better than a standard mat. But again, that there is some downfall to that. But I think each person gets comfortable with it. As long as we give them all the options, they'll figure something out. But yeah, that's certainly an option, Rob.
Okay. All right, so we know we need this jig, and I thought that we'd show you how you can actually make this in Shortcuts a lot real quick. So we have leather that's exactly, I believe in this one, it's going to be 4 inches by 1.5 inches. And in order to do this in Shortcuts a lot, down there in the bottom right, you'll see the library, and that is where you'll need to find that rectangle. And we'll go there real quick here. So once you select that rectangle, it'll be on your mat, and then you can select the position and size, and you want to make sure that you uncheck that keep proportions. And that way you can go ahead and enter your dimensions exactly, okay? So yeah, keep proportions unchecked, and we're just going to make this width 4, the height to be 5. And we're just going to place it right up there on the mat. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to, just like Sherri said, we need to make this 1 millimeter bigger. In order to get millimeters, we need to go right there to units so that we can actually input meters or millimeters in here. So we're going to go to shadow layer, and then under shadow layer right here, that's where we can type in that 0.1, or that 1 millimeter, and we're just going to hit OK here. And that will give us a nice little 1 millimeter. It's going to put a nice little shadow around that box so that our leather can fit nice and snug in there. So right before you cut, you want to hide that original rectangle. And right now we're going to pretend we have 4 these leather strips that we need to engrave on. And that's how we're going to make this jig. And so we're just placing them on our mat, copy and pasting. That way the size stays the same. And once we have those all set up, then all we have to do is just go up to cutter, and we'll be able to cut this with the silver bullet. And so this is right here demonstrating that you do need to tape this down. So you tape it down on your mat, and Sherri was recommending that you tape all 4 corners down. This video only shows 2, but when it actually goes in the machine, 4's on there. So right here, we're just lining up the silver bullet, setting the origin, and for the chipboard, this is what Sherri suggested was for the force, we're going to go down to 50, and for the velocity, we're going to go down to 400.
May I interject something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Rob, please? Dawn has a very different chip than me. So Dawn, what do you think the parameters on the chip that you're using?
We would take the speed down to about 100 and the force probably round about anything from 120 upwards. It does depend on the chip. It's very variable over here.
Very variable. Well, it's variable here too, particularly if it happens to be humid. But this is chip I had sent to Rob, and this is what I normally cut it at, and it cut beautiful today, did it not, Rob?
Oh, it did. It did. It worked out great.
Okay, good.
And don't forget, with this, we use the 60-degree plus blade for the chipboard.
Yes.
Okay, and then
the blade offset for that, for the 60 plus blade, would be 0.7 millimeters.
Yeah, and when Dawn says not, that means a 0 for us American folks.
Yes, my apologies.
So yeah, it's 0. You'll want to put your blade offset to 0.7 here, and you're going to hit the cut button. And once you do that, I'm going to go ahead and skim through here. So we actually set it up to origin, and then we just hit the cut. And as you can see, it just cut really fast. And all we have to do is take it out, and you can see how well this thing cut. You know, these pieces just pop right out. And that was just using the 60-degree plus blade, you know, and those settings that you saw there. So
and one pass.
Yeah, so very, very clean cut. And here's just another video showing you how clean those nice squares are. And then this is what we use the jigs for. So we actually place them in those slots, and you'll see here towards the end of this video here that I'm trying to wiggle the leather, and it stays firm in there. So that's the purpose of the jig, is to hold it in place. So here's a photo of the actual finished one, and then we have little sure cuts a lot, reminders when you're cutting on this. So these are the settings that we used for it. You know, force was 50, velocity was 400. Make sure you use the millimeters when you're creating the shadows, and when you're doing the offset, make sure that offset says 0.7 when you're doing that.
And let me mention one more thing here. For those U.S.-based people, all of the chipboard that I get comes from a place called Uline. It's U-L-I-N-E. They're on the internet. They have warehouses scattered all over the United States. They do deliver. The downside is that the boxes of chipboard have 225 pieces in them, but it's very clean chipboard, and it's cold pressed chipboard, so it's very, very easy to cut. And like I said, this is 3.0 chipboard. This is standard that people use when they're doing the chipboard albums and things like that. So it's a fairly thick piece of chipboard, and that's, as you saw beautifully, and I always suggest when you get it home, bag it into some Ziploc bags to keep it dry, so it doesn't pick up humidity, because it will pick up humidity just from being in the house. And with 225 sheets of chipboard, it normally lasts for a while. So that, or get a box and share it with people. So.
All right, so on this next part here, just like Sherri and Dawn said, for each one of these various blades that they have, comes with a different offset, and if you're hard at, if it's hard for you to remember all these, you can actually create presets here. So in this next one, we're creating a preset for the embossing holder, but you can do the same thing for the 60-degree plus blade, the 45-degree blade, and so that's what we're coming up to next. So this right here, we're just in Scal. Make sure you hit the cutter button. You'll see the screen here, and right here, you can go to the custom cut preset, change all your values first. So for the embosser, for the embossing deboss, we want blade offset 0, overcut 0. And all we have to do is hit that plus button.
Very, very, very important to remember to set those first, because you can't go back and, well, very difficult to go back
and change them. You can overwrite it. What you can't do is delete it.
Right.
Yeah. So as you can see, like right now, it's saved as the embossing. So you got the blade, you got the pen, and now you have some of your custom presets, which is the embossing. So if you have the 60-degree plus, you can add one for that with using these settings that Sherri and Dawn have given you. Mm-hmm. So that's how you can add some presets. So those are the presets we'll be using for the cutting of this leather. So we got some leather prep to do before we can just go ahead and deboss, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, the leather prep is very, very important. It's integral to how well you're going to be able to emboss or deboss. And I usually suggest a cellulose sponge like this. Any sponge will really work, but getting this and getting water in it and getting as much wrung out as you can, and then just running that cellulose sponge across the leather several times. We'll have some pictures of that here in a little bit. And always remembering while you're working on the project, if you happen to get up and walk away or it takes you longer to do it, you want to make sure that that leather is always damp when you're trying to do the embossing or debossing on it. It's not going to hurt to go over it one more time, making sure that you have that. And here, this is something that Michelle did for us earlier today, where the top one is the dampened one and the bottom one was the raw leather. And I'll take a minute here and mention that this particular leather is called vegetable tanned leather. It's the easiest leather that there is to work with. Very, very easy for the machine to cut it. It absolutely cuts it like butter. I had a piece of 9-ounce that I was trying to cut for somebody yesterday that I think is 1/64 of an inch. It went almost all the way through that piece of leather. I had no idea that it would go that far through, but it was a very, very clean cut until it got to the bottom layer. And I think the problem is not the leather, but that if you think about it, you've got the leather and then you've got the skin lining before you have the meat on an animal. And I think it's that I cannot get through that last little bit of it. An X-Acto knife would have gotten around that really easy, and these we didn't measure these. I'm not sure what these are, but these certainly would be extremely easy to cut with the machine.
So once we have the leather all nice and prepped, so we have this little segment here with setting up the machine. And one of the great tips that I learned the other day is, sometimes you're pushing that button and it's not getting exactly where you want. Well, you can always lift up those pinch wheels and you can shift that mat around in order to get it to where exactly you want. And also notice the pinch wheels. They are not on the leather. They will not roll over the leather. So that's one of the key things that Sherri has brought up at the beginning. So make sure that happens.
The only point I would make is that with vegetable tan leather, you do just dampen as you see. Mm-hmm. If you're using a much denser leather, you can actually soak it for up to 2 hours in a bowl of water to soften it up enough first, because some leather is very, very dense indeed, and the more you soak it, the better the impression will be. But that's not for vegetable tan.
Great. Yeah.
All right. So once that's set up, you can also set up your machine. So you can go ahead and tell us, what speed do we use here for this?
Well, of course, 800.
Full speed ahead.
All right.
Full speed ahead.
Full speed. So we're already saving time using speed. Okay. So then the force we got 120 to 140. And just
each leather is slightly different in the density, but that sort of force should give you a good result.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have our jig, and now we need to actually put what we are engraving on the leather. And we need to prep the text first, and then we need to place it in the correct position so that it's very simple once we get to the silver bullet machine. So the first thing that we have here, this is just normal text right here, and we need to fill it, because if we just go to preview right here and we take a look, that silver is not filled in, okay? And we need that embosser to go in and out of every single letter that you see right here in order to fill it. And the only way to do that, and sure cuts a lot right now, is go to line fill. So right here, we're going to go ahead and select the line fill. So we're going to go to Effects, and then we're going to go to line fill. All right, so now that we're in the line fill section here in this window, we're going to go ahead and set the line spacing to 0.15, and we are going to go ahead and keep the original outline, and we're going to hit OK. So it really doesn't look much different on the mat, but if we go back to that preview, you'll see that it's all nice and filled in. Okay, so that's what we need to do. Now, the next part is we need to maintain those rectangles that are right there. That's just fine. And we're going to go ahead and place the first text right up there in the top left corner here, just how you would like to have it embossed right there on your leather. So you have one there, then all you have to do is hit copy and paste, and you can go ahead and move it to the other square or rectangle that we have here, and you just repeat the process. I'm not going to let you guys go ahead and watch this. We're just going to go ahead and cut to that next part. All right, so now that we have them in place, the thing that we'll have to do next is we actually want to shift this all the way down into the bottom right. And in order to do that, all we have to do is select all of them right here. And we're going to go ahead and go to Object, and we're going to group them together. And you'll see why here in a little bit, but we're going to go ahead and shove this down to the bottom right by doing this. Over here in the Position and Size, you can go ahead and click this and click this. That will shove that right down there to the bottom right corner. All right, so prior to actually going to the Cutter menu, we're going to go ahead and turn off those squares. So let's go ahead and expose them, and we're going to go ahead and scroll down here. And to turn them off, we're just going to click those eyeballs and they will disappear. All right, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to go to the Cutter menu. All right, so this window will pop up here. There's going to be a few settings in here that we'll have to adjust, and you'll have to make sure that you adjust as well. So the first thing is make sure that that preset that we created before is set to embossing. If you don't, just make sure that you have the blade offset to 0, overcut set to 0, okay? The next thing here is the cut mode. This right here says WYSIWYG, or typically people will call it what you see is what you get. That's what that stands for, and that is what you'll need to choose. Now check this out. If I choose origin point, look over here at this preview and what happens if you do that. Okay, so you'll see that the silver automatically gets shoved down to the bottom right, and the reason why we need the what you see is what you get option is so that on the machine itself we are going to align that tip of that embosser over the bottom right corner of the jig of that rectangle. Okay, so that's what we're going to be basing this off of, and everything will line up just perfect if we do this. Okay, so all you need to do is go ahead and click the cut button and your machine will go ahead and go.
So the reason why offset is so important, and I'm going to let Dawn here explain it. And
Yes, if you look at this letter, you can see you have the nice clear outline, except it's actually fuzzy. And that is because the offset has been left at 0.25 or whatever it was at. So what it thinks is a blade is actually going past the outline. So you have this effect where each of the fills is over the outline. If you set the offset to 0, then that fill will fit neatly inside the outline, as you can see here, and you get a much cleaner, neater result. The offset is very important.
yes,
Great job, Michelle.
It's so clean. And that's the way these are done as well. Always take the offset to 0, always take the overcut to 0 when you're embossing.
And could you talk about this, Dawn, since you're the one that did these, the completion of these?
Thank you. These were done in a slightly different way with the preparation. Instead of using water as the media to dampen it, I actually put the leather stain straight on and embossed while that was damp, so that had the effect of softening the leather again. The result of that is that when I'd finished, I could put a second layer on but concentrate on the actual embossing areas, which is why this is all darker where the embossing is. It gives a more aged effect.
And do you have that sheen sprayed on there afterwards, Dawn?
That's an applied leather finisher that you just put on with a cloth, leave to dry and buff up, and that gives the sheen.
Yeah. And so the different things that you can use, of course, are dyes, stain. They can be purchased at crafting stores. Dawn, did you say that there were some that you would use shoe leather on? Shoe polish?
The other ones you saw, the ones with the names on, Dawn and Time, they just had a clear shoe polish put on afterwards rather than the more expensive leather finisher.
Okay.
Depends what your budget allows for.
There you go. So, and the dyes come in all colors. Again, at most of these crafting stores, anywhere in the leather department where they sell these things, and you can get these blanks in lots of different places and online, but you can also get the dyes. And then there's lots of explanation online in regards to the finishing of the leather. The one thing that I'd like to point out that is extremely, extremely important when you're handling this, in particular the vegetable leather, which is the easiest to work with, is that your hand oil, any body oil, does tremendous damage to this leather. It will not accept the stains if you get a lot of your hand oil on it. So making sure that your hands are clean and not oily, or even maybe wearing a pair of the cotton gloves while you're working on this. And
I use the cheap throwaway plastic gloves. They
yes.
work well.
Okay. Because that's the body oil and leather, they're not friendly to one another. So you just always want to keep that in mind when you're working with this. Do you have anything else to add to that, Dawn?
No, that's pretty much comprehensive cover.
So did you get this as a kit, Dawn, for these? For
those I bought the coaster shapes as blanks and then cut the circle in and then did the design on top. But if you're doing a lot, you can just buy your own hide. You can get it in pretty large pieces. You can cut your own shapes as well, which is what I did with the other two that you saw.
But where did you get those? You just bought the key ring things, or?
No, I just bought the actual round leather shape, and I got them from a leather shop that I use over here.
No, not the leather. The actual. Not the leather. The actual.
Oh, the keyring pieces.
Yes.
You can buy those off eBay, Amazon, loads of places. Just Google them.
Okay.
All right. So I think that's about wraps this one up. So if you're wanting more information on the Silver Bullet, you always have the silverbulletcutters.com. If you're looking to purchase a Silver Bullet based upon your location, you have the distributor links that are plastered at the top, because you have the US, you have UK, now you have Australia as the distributors. And you can always go there, find some videos. Matter of fact, we released a video today showing the three wise men cutting in live action. So check that out. And of course, on there is the photo gallery. So
let's see if we have any questions.
Looking for questions. I'm not seeing any questions. I thought I saw one pop up. Well, the one just says, "Hi, Dawn." It's from Barbara Sango.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Barbara. Good to see you again.
So yeah, I met Michelle. Did you have? I met this is part of your project, and how you think your first time cutting leather went?
I think it went well. It's very extremely easy, and I love the effect of it.
Yeah, it's
did a great job for the first time out.